The space around Kepler 442b looked like a graveyard of metal and fire. Ships twisted and burned in the darkness between the stars. The battle had been going on for 3 days now, and nobody was winning. Admiral Jae-min Park stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Soul's Pride. His dark eyes watched the tactical display as red and blue dots danced across the screen. Red meant enemy ships, blue meant friends. There were too many red dots. "Captain Lee, report," Jaemin said into his comm unit. "Still holding the line, Admiral," came the voice of Captain Hee-Jin Lee from her destroyer, the Busan's Fury. "But these Vorthon bastards just keep coming. My gunners are getting tired." Commander Tae-ho Kim's voice joined the conversation from his cruiser, the Incheon's Hammer. "Same here, sir. We've been shooting at these bugs for 3 days straight. When do we get to go home?" Jae-min almost smiled. His people always talked too much during battle. It was just how humans worked. They made jokes when scared. They sang songs while shooting. They told stories about home while dodging enemy fire. The other alien races in the coalition thought it was strange. "Hey, Admiral," came another voice over the comm. This was Warrant Officer Nam-Soo Cho from the frigate Gwangju's Spirit. "My grandmother could shoot better than these Vorthon idiots. Want me to teach them how it's done?" Several human voices laughed over the comm channel. Even in the middle of a deadly space battle, they found things funny. The bridge of Soul's Pride was full of noise. Lieutenant So Young Park was humming an old Earth song while she piloted her fighter squadron. The weapons officer was telling a joke about a Vorthon who walked into a bar. The communications officer was playing music between important messages. This was normal for humans. The alien commanders had learned to expect it. Admiral Veltar of the Crystal-like Cathani race spoke over the Allied command channel. His voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Human Admiral Park, your people are very loud today." "That's how we stay sane, Admiral Veltar," Jaemin replied. "Better to laugh than cry." General Mordun of the Insect Threx Warriors clicked his mandibles over the comm. "The noise helps us know you are still alive, humans. It is comforting." Captain Lixara of the water-breathing Nephtai added her bubbling voice to the conversation. "Yes, when humans are quiet, something is wrong." Jaemin nodded. The alien races had fought beside humans for 20 years now. They knew human ways. Humans talked, humans joked, humans made noise. It was what made them human. The battle continued around them. Fourth-hand ships fired their purple energy beams at coalition vessels. The coalition fired back with blue plasma bolts and yellow laser cannons. Ships exploded in bright flashes. New ships took their place. The Vorthon Empire was winning. They had more ships, better weapons, and they never seemed to get tired. Their ships looked like giant insects made of black metal. They moved in perfect formations and never broke apart. "Sir?" called the sensor officer. "New contacts on long range. Vorthon reinforcements coming in." Jaemin looked at the display. More red dots appeared at the edge of the screen. Lots more red dots. "How many?" he asked. "Looks like 2 full battle groups, sir. Maybe 300 ships." The bridge went quiet for a moment. Then Commander Kim's voice came over the comm. "Well, shit. Looks like we're having a party and everyone's invited." More laughter from the human channels. Captain Lee added, "Hope they brought snacks." "I'm getting hungry," but Jaemin wasn't laughing. He looked at the numbers on his screen. The coalition had maybe 200 ships left. The Vorthon already had 400 in the battle. Now 300 more were coming. They were going to lose. Badly. He thought about the mining colony on the planet below. 2 million people lived there. Humans, Cathani, Threx, Nephtai, and dozens of other races. All working together, building a life among the stars. If the coalition lost this battle, those people would die. The Vorthon Empire didn't take prisoners. They didn't make slaves. They just killed everything that wasn't Vorthon. Jaemin had seen what happened on other worlds. Cities turned to ash, families destroyed, children who would never grow up. He looked around his bridge. His crew was still talking and joking. Lieutenant Park was still humming her song. The weapons officer was still telling jokes. They didn't know how bad things really were, but Jamin knew, and he knew what he had to do. He reached for a small red switch on his command chair. This switch was connected to every human ship in the fleet. It would send a single message to every human captain, every human commander, every human crew member. The message was simple. Code silent. Every human in space knew what that meant. They had trained for it. They had hoped they would never have to use it. Jamin pressed the switch. The change happened in seconds. All over the human fleet, voices stopped talking. Music stopped playing. Jokes stopped being told. The constant chatter that had filled the comm channels for 3 days suddenly went silent. On the bridge of Soul's Pride, Lieutenant Park stopped, humming. The weapons officer stopped telling jokes. The communications officer turned off his music. They all looked at their admiral. Their faces were different now. The smiles were gone, the jokes were gone, something cold and hard had taken their place. "Orders, sir?" asked the weapons officer. His voice was flat and emotionless. Jamin looked at his crew. These were good people. Kind people. People who laughed and sang and told stories about home. But now they were something else. Now they were what humans became when they stopped being people and started being weapons. "New priority," Jamin said quietly. "Enemy fleet is to be eliminated. No survivors, no retreat, no mercy." "Understood, sir," came the replies from around the bridge. Admiral Veltar tried to contact them. "Soul's Pride, this is Kethani Command. Please respond." Jamin looked at his communications officer. The man shook his head slightly. They would not answer. Not yet. The human fleet began to move. But it moved differently now. Before, human ships had flown in loose formations, each captain doing their own thing. Now they moved like parts of a single machine, and in the silence that followed, even the stars seemed to hold their breath. The first thing Admiral Veltar noticed was how quiet space had become. For 3 days, the human comm channels had been full of noise. Talking, laughing, music, jokes. It had been annoying sometimes, but also strangely comforting. When humans made noise, it meant they were still fighting, still alive, still human. Now there was nothing. Veltar's crystal body rang with worry as he tried again. "Soul's Pride, this is Kethani Command. Admiral Park, please respond." Only static answered. He turned to his sensor officer. "Are the human ships still functional?" "Yes, Admiral. All systems show green. They are operational and moving." "Then why don't they answer?" His sensor officer had no answer for that. On the other side of the battle, General Morden was having the same problem. His insect eyes watched the tactical display as human ships moved across the screen. But something was wrong with how they moved. Before, human ships had flown like a pack of wild animals, each ship doing its own thing but somehow working together. It had been chaotic but effective. Now they moved like a single creature with many arms, every ship in perfect position, every movement planned and precise. "Try to contact the humans." "Again," Morden clicked to his communications officer. "Still no response, General. They're not talking to anyone." Captain Lixara floated in her water-filled command center, watching the same thing. Her ship sensors showed the human fleet changing formation. They moved without any visible communication between ships. No comm signals, no tactical data streams. Nothing, but they moved like they shared one mind. The Vorthan reinforcements had arrived 10 minutes ago. War Admiral Kethvas commanded the new fleet from his massive command ship. It looked like a giant metal spider floating in space. Kethvas had fought humans before. He knew they were dangerous when they worked together. But he also knew they could be beaten. Humans made mistakes. They got emotional. They took risks to save their friends. But these humans weren't acting like the humans he knew. Status report. Kethvas demanded from his bridge crew. "The human fleet has stopped all communications, War Admiral. They've formed a new battle formation. Very tight. Very organized." Kethvas studied the tactical display. 700 Vorthan ships against 200 coalition vessels. The numbers were strongly in his favor. They're desperate, he decided. Probably some last attempt to look scary before they die. Begin the attack. The Vorthan fleet moved forward, in their standard formation. 3 waves of ships, each supporting the others. It was a formation that had won 1,000 battles across the galaxy. The human fleet waited. Aboard the Soul's Pride, Admiral Jamin Park watched the enemy approach. His bridge was silent except for the soft sounds of machinery. His crew worked, at their stations without speaking. Lieutenant So-Young Park had been recalled from her fighter squadron. She now sat at the helm, her hands moving over the controls with mechanical precision. Her face showed no emotion. The weapons officer monitored his displays. Every gun, every missile, every defensive system was ready. He didn't make jokes anymore. He didn't even blink very often. Range to target? Jamin asked quietly. 50,000 kilometers in closing, came the reply. Jamin nodded. He opened a comm channel to the human fleet, not to the aliens, just to his own people. All ships, he said in a voice like winter steel. Initiate Hunter Protocol. No survivors. 200 human ships moved as one. The first Vorthan wave expected the humans to spread out, to try to fight from multiple directions like they usually did. Instead, the human fleet condensed into a tight spearhead formation and drove straight at the center of the Vorthan line. It should have been suicide. Instead, it was art. The human ships moved through the Vorthan formation like a knife through water. Every shot was perfectly aimed. Every maneuver was precisely timed. Ships that should have collided with each other passed within meters of destruction. Warrant Officer Nam-Su Cho fired his weapons from the Gwangju's Spirit. He didn't curse the enemy or make jokes about their mothers, he simply selected targets and destroyed them. One after another. Clean. Efficient. Final. His guns never missed. His targeting was perfect. When one enemy ship died, he moved to the next without pause or celebration. Commander Taeho Kim's cruiser Inchin's hammer carved through a formation of Vorthan destroyers. He didn't call out warnings or ask for help from nearby ships. He simply calculated the best path through the enemy and took it. His ship's weapons fired in perfect rhythm. Port guns, starboard guns, forward missiles, aft torpedoes. Each weapon system working in harmony with the others. 11 enemy ships died in 3 minutes. Kim felt nothing about it. Captain Hye-Jin Lee brought her destroyer Busan's Fury alongside, a Vorthan cruiser. At point-blank range, she fired everything she had into the enemy's hull. The Vorthan ship exploded in a ball of fire and metal. Pieces of debris bounced off her ship's shields. She was already turning toward her next target before the explosion finished. The alien coalition forces watched in growing amazement and fear. "By the Great Crystal," whispered Admiral Veltar. "What have they become?" General Mordun's mandibles clicked rapidly. They fight like the hive mind of ancient legends, as if they share one terrible thought. Captain Lixara could only watch as human ships flowed around Vorthan vessels like water around rocks. But this water was full of teeth and claws and death. The Vorthan War Admiral Kethavus felt the first touch of real fear. His ships were dying faster than he could count them. The humans moved through his fleet like they could see the future. "How are they coordinating?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Unknown, War Admiral. We detect no communications between their ships, no command signals, nothing." "Then how do they know where to be?" His tactical officer had no answer. The human fleet completed its first pass through the Vorthan formation. 80 enemy ships had been destroyed. The human fleet had lost 3 ships. The mathematics of war had suddenly changed. Admiral Jamin Park watched his tactical display with eyes like black ice. The enemy was beginning to scatter. Their tight formation was breaking apart as individual captains tried to save their own ships. This was what he had been waiting for. "All ships," he said into his comm. "Begin harvest." The human fleet spread out. Each ship selected enemy vessels that were now isolated from their friends. What followed was not a battle. It was a methodical execution. One by one, Vorthan ships died, and in the silence between the stars, even their enemies began to understand that they were witnessing something new, something that would change how the galaxy thought about humans forever. The humans had stopped pretending that war was anything but organized murder, and they were very, very good at it. War Admiral Kethvas watched his fleet die. It wasn't happening fast like an explosion. It was happening slowly, methodically, like a machine taking apart another machine piece by piece. The humans had spread out across the battlefield, and now they hunted his ships one by one. "Tactical report," he ordered, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. "We have lost 130 ships in the past hour, War Admiral. The humans have lost 7. Kethvas felt his insect blood run cold. Those numbers were impossible. His ships were better armed, better armored, and had better technology, but the humans kept winning. How are they doing this? Unknown, sir. They move like they can predict our every action. On the bridge of Soul's Pride, Admiral Jamin Park studied the tactical display. Each red dot represented a Vorthan ship. Each red dot was a problem to be solved. He felt nothing about the crews inside those ships. They had chosen to be here. They had chosen to threaten innocent people on the planet below. Now they would face the consequences of that choice. "Commander, Kim," he said into his comm, "take your squadron and eliminate the enemy heavy cruisers in Grid 7 Alpha." "Understood," came the cold reply from Commander Tae-ho Kim. Jamin watched as Kim's ships moved into position. 5 human vessels against 8 Vorthan heavy cruisers. The numbers favored the enemy. The skill did not. Kim's squadron approached. The Vorthan ships from 3 different directions at once. The enemy commanders tried to coordinate their defense, but the humans had already calculated every possible response. The first Vorthan cruiser exploded when Kim's ship fired a full spread of missiles into its reactor core. The second cruiser died when 2 human destroyers focused their fire on its command section. The third tried to escape, but found itself flying into a carefully prepared trap. In 12 minutes, all 8 Vorthan cruisers were dead. Kim's squadron had taken minimal damage. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out again and again. Captain Hyejin Lee commanded a group of human destroyers that moved like hunting wolves. They would appear suddenly near a Vorthan ship, destroy it completely, then vanish before enemy reinforcements could arrive. Her ship, Busan's Fury, slipped through the wreckage of dead vessels like a ghost. When she found an enemy ship trying to repair damage, she would strike without warning. No communication, no demand for surrender, just death, delivered with perfect efficiency. Lieutenant So Young Park had been assigned to a new task. She now commanded a squadron of human fighters that moved through space like a swarm of angry insects. But these insects thought and planned, and killed with purpose. Her fighters would dive into formations of Vorthan ships, target specific weak points, and then disappear before the enemy could respond. Engine sections, weapon systems, life support. Each attack was designed to cause maximum damage with minimum risk. She flew her fighter with the same cold precision that her grandmother had used to cut vegetables. Every movement was calculated. Every shot was placed exactly where it needed to be. The Vorthan pilots tried to fight back, but they were used to enemies who flew with emotion, enemies who made mistakes when they got angry or scared. The human pilots felt nothing. They simply executed their missions and moved on to the next target. On the battleship, Daegu's Thunder, Commander Yoon Soo-jang coordinated orbital bombardment of Vorthan supply ships. His weapons could destroy targets on the surface of planets. In space, they were like hammers swinging at insects. But Jang didn't waste ammunition. Each shot was carefully calculated to destroy the maximum number of enemy vessels. He would wait until several Vorthan ships moved close together, then fire a single massive blast that would eliminate them all. His crew worked in perfect silence. The weapons officer selected targets with mechanical precision. The navigation officer positioned the ship for optimal firing angles. The communications officer monitored enemy frequencies for tactical intelligence. No one spoke unless necessary. No one showed emotion. They were parts of a machine designed for one purpose: killing enemy ships. The alien coalition forces found themselves pushed to the edges of the battle, not because the humans didn't want their help, but because there was nothing left for them to do. Admiral Veltar tried to coordinate with his human allies, but got no response to his communications. His crystal ships could only watch as human vessels moved through the battlefield like dancers performing a deadly ballet. They don't need us anymore, he realized with growing horror. They don't need anyone. General Mordun's insect warriors were known throughout the galaxy for their ferocity in battle. They fought with claws and mandibles and never retreated from an enemy. But watching the humans work, he felt something he had never experienced before: inadequacy. My warriors are brave, he clicked to his aide. But these humans, they are something else. They are death-given form. Captain Lixara floated in her command center, her aquatic senses detecting something wrong with the water around her. It took her several minutes to realize what it was. She was afraid. The humans moved through space like predators who had found their perfect hunting ground. Every action was calculated for maximum effect. Every attack was designed to cause the most damage possible. They had become the most efficient killing machine the galaxy had ever seen. Major Kyung-ho Shin led a boarding party onto a damaged Vorthan command ship. His Marines moved through the enemy vessel like a plague of locusts. They didn't take prisoners. They didn't stop to loot valuables. They simply eliminated every enemy they found and moved on. Shin himself carried only basic weapons: a plasma rifle, a combat knife, and explosive charges. He didn't need anything fancy. He was the weapon. When his team reached the enemy bridge, they found 12 Vorthan officers trying to coordinate the defense of their ship. The battle lasted 30 seconds. When it was over, the ship belonged to the humans. But Shin didn't celebrate. He didn't feel proud or excited. He simply set charges to destroy the ship and moved his team to the next target. Dr. Yoon-ji Yu worked in the medical bay of the Coalition hospital ship. She treated wounded soldiers from all races with the same cold efficiency that her military counterparts showed in combat. Broken bones were set with mechanical precision. Wounds were sealed with calculated care. Patients were stabilized and moved to recovery with no wasted motion or unnecessary words. She saved lives with the same emotionless dedication that others used to take them. The Vorthan fleet was dying. Of the 700 ships that had entered the battle, fewer than 300 remained functional. Many of those were trying to escape, but the humans had positioned ships to block all the exit routes. War Admiral Kethvas realized that his mighty fleet was trapped. The humans had turned the battlefield into a killing ground, and his ships were the prey. "Send a message to all ships," he ordered. "Full retreat. Every ship for itself." It was the order he had never thought he would give. But watching his fleet being systematically destroyed, he knew it was the only choice left. As Vorthan ships began to scatter in all directions, trying to find some way to escape, the human fleet adapted instantly. They moved to cut off escape routes, to herd the fleeing ships into carefully prepared kill zones, and in the silence of space, Admiral Jamin Park allowed himself a small, cold smile. The enemy was broken. Now came the harvest. The emergency meeting of the Galactic Coalition High Council was unlike any in their recorded history. Representatives from 50 different races sat in the Great Chamber, all watching the same horrifying battle feed from Kepler 442b. Counselor Thrix of the Kethani race stood at the center of the chamber, his crystal body reflecting the light from dozens of screens. Each screen showed a different view of the battle, but they all told the same story. The humans had become something terrifying. "This cannot be real," whispered Counselor Vexhai of the Nephtai. Her aquatic form floated in a specially designed tank. "These are the same humans who sing songs during battle, who tell jokes while being shot at." Counselor Mortek of the Threx clicked his mandibles nervously. "I have fought beside humans for 20 years. They are brave but chaotic, emotional. They make mistakes because they care too much about saving their friends." On the screens, human ships moved through the Vorthan fleet with perfect coordination. Every attack was precisely timed. Every maneuver was calculated for maximum effect. There was no chaos, no emotion, no mistakes. "Where is Ambassador Lee?" demanded Counselor Thrix. "We need answers." Ambassador Minho Lee entered the chamber at that moment. He was a tall man with graying hair and tired eyes. He had served as humanity's representative to the Coalition for 15 years. The other counselors respected him as a voice of reason and wisdom. But today, he looked different. There was something in his eyes that the aliens had never seen before. Something cold and proud and terrible. "Ambassador Lee," said Counselor Thrix, "what has happened to your people? This silence, this efficiency, it's not natural. Your species is known for noise, for chaos, for emotion in battle. This is something else." Lee walked to the center of the chamber. He looked up at the screen showing the battle. Human ships were systematically destroying what remained of the Vorthon fleet. No mercy was being shown, no quarter was being given. "Counselor," Lee said quietly, "you've seen humans at war, but you've never seen humans when we stop pretending war is anything but the organized application of death." The chamber fell silent except for the sounds coming from the battle feed. Explosions. Weapons fire. The death screams of dying ships. "What do you mean?" asked Counselor Vexhai. Lee turned to face her. "You think the way my people normally fight is how we really fight? The talking, the music, the jokes. You think that's just human nature?" He gestured toward the screens. "That's not nature, that's restraint. We make noise during battle because it helps us remember that we're people. It helps us stay human while doing inhuman things." "Counselor," Mortek's mandibles clicked rapidly. "But your people are always emotional in battle. They take risks to save wounded friends. They get angry when comrades die." "Yes," Lee nodded. "Because when we stop feeling those things, we become what you see on those screens. We become perfect killing machines." On the main display, Admiral Jamin Park's flagship Soul's Pride was leading a formation of human battleships against a group of fleeing Vorthan vessels. The enemy ships tried to escape in different directions, but the humans had predicted every possible move. The Vorthon ships died one by one, picked off with surgical precision. "You're Admiral Park," said Counselor Thrix. "He's always been reasonable, level-headed. He talks to us, coordinates with us. Now he won't even answer our communications." Lee watched as Park's ship destroyed another enemy vessel. Admiral Park is still reasonable, still level-headed. That's what makes this so terrifying. He's not angry or emotional. He's simply doing his job with perfect efficiency. Sensor Tech Ji Woo Song appeared on one of the communication screens. She was stationed aboard the Coalition monitoring station, far from the battle. Her face was pale as she reported the energy readings she was detecting. "Council members," she said, "the human ships are operating at power levels we've never seen before. They're pushing their reactors beyond normal safety limits." "Are they going to explode?" asked Counselor Vexhai with hope in her voice. "No, ma'am. They're channeling all that extra power into weapons and defensive systems. They're making their ships more dangerous than they've ever been." Lee nodded grimly. "We call it war emergency power. It's only used when survival is at stake." "But you're winning," protested Counselor Thrix. "The Vorthon fleet is almost destroyed. Why are your people still operating in this mode?" "Because," Lee said quietly, "they're not just fighting this battle. They're sending a message to every enemy of the Coalition. They're showing what happens when you threaten innocent people under our protection." The counselors watched as the human fleet cornered the last group of Vorthon ships near the edge of the star system. There were maybe 50 enemy vessels left out of the 700 that had started the battle. The Vorthon ships tried to surrender. They broadcast messages in dozens of languages, begging for mercy, offering to retreat and never return. The human ships didn't respond. They simply moved into attack formation. "They're not going to accept the surrender," realized Counselor Mortek with horror. "No," Lee confirmed. "They're not." The last 50 Vorthon ships died in a coordinated attack that lasted less than 5 minutes. The human fleet moved through them like a scythe through wheat. When it was over, there were no survivors. The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then Counselor Thrix spoke in a voice like breaking crystal. "Ambassador Lee, this is genocide. Your people have just committed genocide." Lee turned to face him with eyes like winter steel. No, counselor. Genocide is what the Vorthon Empire does to planets full of innocent people. What you just watched was an execution. A very thorough, very professional execution. But your people, they're supposed to be better than this. They're supposed to care about mercy, about honor in battle. We do care, Lee said. That's why. We normally fight the way we do. We joke and sing and take unnecessary risks because it helps us remember that our enemies are people too. It helps us show mercy when mercy is appropriate. He gestured toward the screens again. But when an enemy threatens to commit genocide against innocent civilians, mercy becomes a luxury we can't afford. So we put aside our humanity for a while and become something else. Something necessary. On the screens, the human fleet was beginning to change again. Ships that had moved with mechanical precision were starting to spread out. The perfect formations were becoming looser, more natural. Then, like a dam bursting, sound exploded from the human communication channels. Woo-hoo! Did you see that shot? Kim, right through their main reactor. Hell yes, that's how we do it in Busan. Is everyone okay? Anyone need assistance? Someone start playing music. I need to hear something beautiful after all that ugliness. The aliens listened in amazement as the humans suddenly sounded like themselves again. Loud, chaotic, emotional, caring. But the counselors now understood the truth. The noise wasn't a sign of weakness or lack of discipline. It was a sign that the humans were choosing to be people instead of weapons. And the choice to be weapons was always available to them. How long? Asked Counselor Thrix quietly. How long can your people maintain that other state? Lee considered the question. As long as necessary. Days, weeks, years. However long it takes to eliminate any threat to innocent life. The implications of that statement settled over the chamber like a cold fog. The Vorthon Empire will hear about this, said Counselor Vexahai. Every enemy of the coalition will hear about this. Lee nodded. Yes, they will. And they'll understand that threatening civilians under coalition protection is no longer a viable strategy. He paused, then added, when humans go silent in battle, it means we've stopped seeing our enemies as people. They become problems to be solved. And we're very, very good at solving problems. As if to emphasize his point, the screen showed the human fleet moving into protective positions around the planet Kepler 442b. The 2 million civilians on the surface were safe. But across the galaxy, in the command centers of 100 different hostile empires, military leaders were beginning to understand that the balance of power had just shifted. The humans had shown what they really were, underneath all the noise and chaos and emotion, and it was the most terrifying thing the galaxy had ever seen. The news traveled across the galaxy faster than light itself. In the command center of the Vorthon Empire's capital world, Supreme Admiral Vextoth received the report of his fleet's destruction with cold fury. He was the most feared military commander in Vorthon history. His Devourer squadron had never lost a battle. They had conquered entire star systems and brought down civilizations. 700 ships, he said slowly, his voice like grinding metal. 700 ships destroyed by 200 humans. His aide, a younger Vorthon officer, trembled as he delivered the full report. Yes, Supreme Admiral. War Admiral Kethvas managed to escape with only 12 ships. He reports that the humans fought unlike anything he had ever seen. Vextoth studied the tactical recordings that had been transmitted before the fleet's destruction. He watched human ships move with impossible coordination. He saw the methodical destruction of Vorthon vessels. He observed the complete absence of mercy or hesitation. These are not the same humans we have fought before, he concluded. No, sir. The survivors report that the humans went completely silent during the battle. No communications, no emotion, they fought like machines. Vextoth felt something he had not experienced in decades, uncertainty. But he was the Supreme Admiral of the Devourer Squadron. He had a reputation to maintain. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We're going to Kepler 442b. His aide looked shocked. Sir, perhaps we should wait for reinforcements. No, Vextoth cut him off. If we don't respond immediately, every race in the galaxy will think they can challenge us. The humans got lucky. They won't be lucky twice. The Devourer Squadron consisted of 300 of the most advanced warships in the Vorthon Empire. Each ship was larger and more powerful than anything the Coalition could field. Their crews were veterans of 1,000 battles. As the massive fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, Vextoth allowed himself a moment of confidence. The humans might have new tactics, but they couldn't overcome superior firepower and numbers. He was wrong. At Kepler 442b, Admiral Jamin Park stood on the bridge of Sol's Pride, watching long-range sensors. His fleet had spent the past 6 hours in normal operations. Crews were talking again. Music played over the comm channels. Some ships were even requesting permission to rotate personnel for rest. "Sir," called the sensor officer. "Multiple hyperspace signatures incoming. Large formation." Jamin looked at the tactical display. Red dots appeared at the edge of the system, moving in perfect formation. He counted them quickly. 300 ships. "Analysis?" he asked. "Configuration matches Vorthon Devourer Squadron, sir. These are their elite units." Around the bridge, conversations stopped. The crew looked at their admiral, waiting for orders. Jamin thought about the colony below. 2 million people going about their daily lives. Children playing in parks. Families having dinner together. Scientists working to unlock the secrets of the universe. All of them depending on his fleet for protection. He reached for the red switch, on his command chair. The same switch he had pressed hours earlier. "Sir," said his communications officer quietly, "the alien coalition forces are requesting coordination for the coming battle." Jamin paused. Admiral Veltar, General Morden, and Captain Lixara had been good allies. They deserved better than to be ignored. "Open a channel to all coalition forces," he ordered. When the channel opened, he spoke clearly. "Allied commanders, this is Admiral Park. We are about to engage a superior enemy force. I recommend you withdraw to safe distance and observe." Admiral Veltar's crystal voice came back immediately. "Admiral Park, we are your allies. We fight together." "Not this time," Jamin replied. "This is going to be different from normal battle. Your ships might get caught in our operational area. Please withdraw." There was a pause. Then General Morden clicked his mandibles over the comm. "You're going silent again, aren't you?" "Yes." Captain Lixara's bubbling voice joined the conversation. "We understand, Admiral. We will maintain safe distance and provide support if requested." "Thank you," Jamin said. Then he pressed the red switch. Silence fell over the human fleet like a blanket of death. The Devourer Squadron approached the inner system with all the confidence of conquerors. Supreme Admiral Vextoth expected the humans to form defensive positions around the planet. Instead, the human fleet moved to meet them halfway. "They're coming straight at us," reported his tactical officer. 200 ships against 300. They must be insane. Vextoth studied the formation. The humans were arranged in a pattern he had never seen before. It looked almost like a flower. Ships arranged in petals around a central core. It doesn't matter what formation they use, he decided. All ships attack formation, destroy them. The two fleets met in the space between worlds. The battle lasted exactly 47 minutes. The Devourer Squadron attacked with overwhelming firepower, expecting to crush the human fleet through sheer superior numbers. What they found instead was a formation that seemed to bend without breaking. As Vorthon ships fired into the center of the human formation, the petals would close around them like a flower trapping insects. Human ships would appear from unexpected angles, deliver devastating attacks, then disappear back into the formation before the enemy could respond. Captain Dong-hyun Park commanded the heavy cruiser Jeju's Wrath from his position in one of the outer petals. His ship and 4 others were responsible for eliminating enemy command vessels. They moved through the battle like sharks through water, appearing suddenly to destroy target ships, then vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. His crew worked in perfect silence. The weapons officer marked targets with mechanical precision. The pilot maneuvered the ship with calculated efficiency. The engineer managed power distribution to maximize combat effectiveness. When Park's targeting computer identified a Vorthan command ship, he didn't hesitate. His ship dove through a formation of enemy escorts, absorbed their fire on reinforced shields, and delivered a full spread of missiles into the command vessel's bridge. The enemy ship exploded. Park was already turning toward his next target before the debris stopped expanding. Commander Ha-Un Kim commanded the dreadnought Sako's Vengeance from the center of the formation. Her massive ship served as the anchor point that allowed the entire formation to move and flow like a living thing. Went to arm. Supreme Admiral Vextoth tried to break through the human formation with a concentrated assault. Kim's ship was waiting. The Sako's Vengeance was the most heavily armed vessel in the human fleet, and Kim used every weapon she had. Particle beams lanced out to slice through enemy hulls. Missile volleys saturated enemy defensive systems. Energy torpedoes punched through armor like paper. In 12 minutes, Kim's ship destroyed 18 enemy vessels without taking significant damage herself. The precision was inhuman. The coordination was perfect. The results were inevitable. Supreme Admiral Vextoth watched his legendary fleet die around him. Ships that had conquered star systems were being destroyed by an enemy that moved like a single organism with many parts. "How are they doing this?" he demanded of his tactical officer. "Unknown, sir. They're not using any communication signals we can detect. They move like they share one mind." Vextoth realized with growing horror that he was witnessing something new in galactic warfare. The humans weren't just fighting a battle. They were performing a demonstration. A lesson for anyone who might threaten innocent people under their protection. When the last Vorthan ship in his fleet exploded, Vextoth found himself alone in space. His command ship was the only vessel left from the mighty Devourer squadron. The human fleet surrounded him in perfect formation, weapons trained on his ship from every direction. Then, for the first time in nearly an hour, the human communication channels came alive. "Soul's Pride to Vorthan command vessel," came Admiral Park's voice. "You have 30 seconds to surrender or be destroyed." Vextoth looked around his bridge. His crew was dead or dying. His ship was crippled. His legendary fleet was space debris. "I surrender," he said quietly. The change in the human fleet was immediate and startling. Ships that had moved with mechanical precision suddenly became loose and organic in their movements. The comm channels exploded with human voices. "Did everyone make it through okay?" Damage report from Busan's Fury. "We're banged up but still flying." "Someone start playing music. I need to hear something human after all that." "Good job, everyone. Let's go home." Admiral Veltar, General Morden, and Captain Lixara watched from their safe distance as the human fleet began moving back toward Dyke, the planet. The transformation from perfect killing machine to chaotic but caring people had taken less than a minute. "They can turn it on and off," whispered Admiral Veltar. "Like a switch. And when the switch is off," added General Morden, "they become the most dangerous thing in the galaxy." The news of the Devourer squadron's destruction spread across known space within days. The most elite military force in the Vorthan Empire, destroyed in less than an hour by a smaller human fleet. But it wasn't just the military victory that sent shockwaves through the galaxy. It was the manner of the victory, the complete systematic annihilation of an enemy force with surgical precision. In command centers across 100 different worlds, military leaders came to the same conclusion. The humans had been holding back. For decades,